it's Jess from Peace Love Books, and today I'm here with my June wrap-up. I read 33 books this month, which I'm very excited for. I read a lot of great books, a lot of audiobooks, and just a lot of books in general. I went kind of on my TBR and kind of completely off of my TBR, so I will go ahead and get to the 33 books that I read this month. The first book that I read this month is If I Never Met You by Vari McFarlane. I listened to the audiobook of this, and I ended up giving this one 4 stars. Our main character is a woman of color in a male-dominated industry, and so she constantly has to try to be taken seriously and do more work for less recognition than anybody else in the company. And she's been dating her boyfriend for 18 years, I want to say, literally half her life. She's in her mid-30s, they've been dating, they want to maybe try for a kid, and then he says, I don't want to be tied down anymore, so let's split things off. And she's devastated, and then he immediately starts dating someone else, so she starts fake dating a younger guy at the office so that he can get a promotion and she can kind of not be seen as like the pitied party in the relationship that just ended, since he's already moved well on. And obviously there's a romance. This was definitely more of a women's fiction, and I went in knowing that because I saw a couple reviews that said it's not wholly a romance, but it is British, and I love that about this. It was really fun. I love the dynamics of the characters. I love how it took so long for our main character to just get over the relationship, because too often it's been like a week and they're already on to someone else, and I'm like, she just was with this guy for 18 years. Let her be single for a second and like angry for a second. So I really appreciated that. This was a fun book. Like I said, 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I read The Boyfriend Project by Farah Roshan. I think that's how you say her last name. I was sent this from the publisher. This one is our main character is another woman of color in a tech male-dominated industry, and it turns out that her and 2 other women are actually dating the same guy, and they figure it out because of a date gone viral on Twitter, and she's like, oh my god, that's who I was dating. So they all form a pact to put themselves first and to not worry about dating and men. There's a new guy in the office that she kind of has a thing for, but she's like, I can't do anything about that, and he has a huge secret of his own, and he can't tell her that, and that can jeopardize any kind of relationship they have. And this was okay. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I think the consensus with everybody reading this is that the romance wasn't all that great, and it was pretty slow, and I didn't really feel that big of a connection with the romance, and I knew his secret was going to come out, and she was like, I knew I couldn't trust you, and that whole thing was going to be the drama at the end, and I don't like it when I know the drama coming at the end and can see it from a mile away, so I'm just like waiting for it to happen, and then it does happen, and I'm like, well, how are they going to get over this? And so 3 out of 5 stars, I was left wanting more. Then I listened to the audio of That Kind of Guy by Talia Hibbert. This one is an age gap where it's an older woman and a younger guy. He's in his 20s, she's in her late 30s. She is divorced and she's a writer, and she is going to a convention because she might have won an award, but her ex is going to be there with his new either wife or girlfriend with his new baby, and so she's like, I don't want to go alone, and the guy who's in his 20s is like her best friend, so he's like, I'll go with you, and they fake date at this convention, and it is so fun. I ended up giving it a really, really high 4 out of 5 stars. I love their relationship and their dynamics. I loved having an older woman with a younger guy, and it just was what it was. She had a really cute dog in here, and it was just really fun, and I like reading about writers and how it did focus on being a female writer compared to men in the publishing industry, so I really like that. So highly recommend Talia Hibbert. Then, I think you guys know I talk about this all the time now, I read Will You Be Mine by Rilsey Adams. This one is a friends to lovers romance, and they're best friends. He's an artist, and I don't remember what she does, but she needs to go to a wedding of her ex-best friend who she has a past with, and he's getting married, and he's why she won't get into a relationship with any friends because of how that crashed and burned, and so she doesn't want to go alone because she's like, this ended horribly and now he's getting married and I have to go, and so her best friend ends up being her fake date, so it looks like she's moved on, is living this awesome life, and obviously they start catching feelings at the wedding, and it's so good. There's some secrets thrown out there that really shocked me, so the beginning was a little slow, but then once things started going and all these secrets started popping up, I'm like, yes, please. It was so good. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I cannot recommend this one enough. Then I read Soft on Soft by Mina Waheed. This was a pick for the Brown Girl Book Club, and this was okay. It's a sapphic romance, and so our 2 main characters meet, and it's just a very soft, slow romance, and they use the theme soft all throughout it, and it was just fine. I don't know if it was just slow. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, and it was just like very sweet, but I think too sweet for me. Nothing dramatic happened. The main character is a model, and she is a curvier character, and then we have her makeup artist, and they end up falling for each other, and it's just a very slow book, but I did appreciate a lot of the conversations about consent and what they were comfortable with each other, and it was just a sweet romance. There was nothing really else to it. It was really short, so I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Wasn't bad, but wasn't like what I was looking for. Then I listened to The Sun and Her Star by Dylan Allen. This one, our main characters meet when they're little. The boy is, I'm pretty sure, like raised in a cult, and she is living there for the summer with her aunt, and they meet, and they like to share books with each other, and form a really close friendship, and then she has to leave, and then they are reunited, and it's a romance from there, and I thought this was fun. It was cute. I did end up giving this one 4 stars. I do think the ending I didn't love, and I don't remember why. It was just fine. There was a lot of like emotions running because they both were reconnected later on in life, but it's already like escaping my memory, so it was nothing special. I did like this as a kind of second chance romance because they were torn apart as friends when they were little, and now they're together. Then I read Zenny by Rebecca Weatherspoon, which I think you guys know I'm obsessed with. I listened to this one on audio. Zenny has to go to her aunt's will reading to see like what she left, and her aunt says that Zenny gets all this stuff if she marries this huge Scottish guy who lives in America that was friends with her aunt. And so we have Zenny and this big Scottish guy getting married, and so that they could both inherit money and stuff from the aunt, and it's really fun. They just like have this fun, flirty relationship, and they're so open and honest with each other, and I absolutely loved it, and I would definitely recommend this. It was just not something I've read before, which I really appreciated. I love Rebecca Weatherspoon, and yeah, there's secrets about her family that come to light, and he's dealing with some drama with his own family. I just love Rebecca Weatherspoon, so I could not recommend this one enough. Then I read Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. This one is written in verse, and so it is a story about 2 sisters who actually don't know they're sisters. They have the same father, and one lives in the United States, the other one lives in the Dominican Republic, and the one in the Dominican Republic lives with, I think, her aunt, and they're very poor, and they live a very, very different life than the daughter who lives in America, and her father actually passes away in a flight in 2011, soon after 9/11 happened, and so the whole entire plane went down, and it was mostly people who were Dominican, and once it was ruled that it wasn't actually a terrorist attack, nobody cared anymore. No, like, it just left the public eye, and the only people who really were affected by it were the people who knew people on that plane. And it's actually, it doesn't specifically say it is that flight, but it is inspired by that flight that happened. There is a note in here about that, and I didn't know about that, and it's one of the deadliest plane crashes in history, so that was very interesting to learn about when I was reading this, and it's amazing. There is a sapphic romance with our main character in America, and there is a lot of hardships going on with the one living in the Dominican Republic, and they actually end up meeting, and it's them trying to overcome their grief and their knowledge that their dad wasn't who they thought he was, and learning that they have a new sister. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I really, really enjoyed this. I really loved the writing and how just poetic it was, since it is written in verse, and I'm really excited to read the Poedex. I've heard the audios are great, but I just read it as a book, and I loved it. Then I listened to Destiny's Surrender by Beverly Jenkins. This is book 2 in this series, and it was so good. Our main character is actually a prostitute, and she has one of her best customers is this guy, and she's kind of catching feelings for him, and he like spoils her with stuff, and then something happens and she ends up getting pregnant and doesn't tell him until like a year later when she has to because something's going down, and he's like, excuse me? He's in the process of like trying to court someone to marry him, and yeah, this was just such a good romance. I don't think I've ever read a sex worker in a historical romance, so I really enjoyed that, and it was good. I love the whole family in here of the guys and their mom, because all the guys do have their romances in the series, and their mom's always present, and her storyline kind of intertwines throughout all 3. And I will say, like, the beginning of these books are so good in this series, and then halfway they're together, and then the last half is just like different stuff happening, so it kind of slows down for me, so I always give them 4 out of 5 5 stars, but they're so good, I could not recommend it enough. Then I read this Earl of Mine by Kate Bateman. I have a whole reading vlog of historical romances I've read. If I have any reading vlogs for these, they'll all be linked down below. But this one is our main character doesn't want to get married, and I think like her cousin keeps on pressuring to marry her, and he's a really awful guy. And so she decides to go to the prison and says, give me someone on death row. I'll marry him so I can be a widow and society can stop being annoying. And so she marries this guy. He ends up being undercover and not actually in prison, and she soon realizes she marries an earl, and so she's like, well, crap. And so they start to get to know each other, and it's so good. I think in this one she does run her father's shipping company. I read a lot of historicals this month, so I can't remember if this one was that she owned the shipping company, but I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, she is. Okay, it says shipping heiress. So she runs her own company, and I really loved how strong and just independent she was, and I love this. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and I can't wait to read more in the series and more from this author. Then I read The Soldier Scoundrel by Kat Sebastian. This is an MM historical romance, and our main characters are kind of 2 different guys. The one grew up poor, and now he runs his own business where he kind of is like a fixer and goes and figures things out and fixes things for like the nobility. And the love interest is a guy whose sister used his services, but he didn't know what those services were. So he shows up and he's like, hey, what are you doing with my sister? And he actually is wounded from the war, so he has a cane and he limps, and it's their romance, and it's really good. And they go and try to investigate this one case together, and I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The romance was really good, and I liked how there was that other storyline of them trying to figure out this thing, and our main character who owns the business, he's really touchy about his past and where he came from, but doesn't want to like act like, there's a point where they have to like act like something, doesn't want to act like a footman or something. He says like, I'm not like that. I'm not poor anymore. I'm not a servant. And he's really touchy about that. And I really liked how the story addressed that kind of aspect of old money versus new money and how people view people who are not raised rich. So I really like this one. Then for the blackout buddy read, I picked up White Rage by Carol Anderson. This one, I don't tab books, and I tabbed quite a bit in here. This made me so mad when I was reading it. I was shaking my head so much. This is nonfiction about the history of racism in America. So much that we aren't taught, and I just got angry. And I think that's the whole point, is to show how unfair history has been to black people in our country, and how the Emancipation Proclamation was just like a piece of paper. It didn't actually give black people the freedoms that they deserved, and like there was still slavery even after the Emancipation Proclamation, legal slavery, and how just the whole thing. There's too much to go into. I think everybody should read this if you want a historical viewpoint. It is all history, so it might seem dry to you, but I really liked it from a standpoint that I didn't learn this in high school or college, and it was stuff that's really important to know. Then I read The Rogue on Fifth Avenue by Joanna Shupe. Joanna Shupe is one of my new favorite authors. I read another book of hers this month. This one, they're all in America, this series is, and our main character, she is like a modern day Robin Hood. She literally steals from people to give to poor people, and she continuously goes to the bad parts of town to help people out. And so she's trying to help this one woman out who's accused of murdering her husband, who was abusive, and so she's gonna go to jail for murdering a man who was about to hurt her children. And so she's trying to help her, so she goes to her family's lawyer and is like, hey, will you help me? His name's Frank, which is my uncle's name, which is a bit weird, but I got over it. And he like doesn't want to help her, but then he does because he's like really intrigued by her. And so they start meeting together, and they kind of start falling for each other while he's helping her, but he has a reputation that he needs to uphold. And he's like, his associates are like, why are you working for the poor people? Like, get over it. You can't help them. It's so good. He has a secret past of his own, and again we deal with like the where you come from kind of stigma in this book. I loved it so much. I highly recommend Joanna Shupe. I can't recommend her enough. Then I listened to the audio of The Wicked and the Wallflower by Sarah McLean. This one, our main character, she somehow like meets the devil, and he is one of the bare-knuckled bastards, so he kind of runs the streets with his brother, and they're known for being like bad, but they have a lot of power and they help a lot of people, like the poor people in town. And so she's immediately intrigued by him, and they keep on running into each other, and she learns that her family doesn't have a lot of money. Is that this one? I think that's this one. And I have read a lot of historicals, and they're all running together in my mind, but I'm pretty sure she figures out that her brother has lost all their money, so she has to marry someone. And so yeah, that's where the story goes. This is the first one in the series, so we learn the background of Devil and his family and how they got to where they are, and Ewan is our villain, and he does get the third book in the series, which I read later this month too, and it was good. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I think I liked it more because I listened to it on audio. The other 2 in the series I gave 3 out of 5 stars. Not my favorite, but I enjoyed this first book. Next, I listened to The Deep by Rivers Solomon. I listened to this on audio. It's very short, and it's all about these like mermaids that are descendants of slaves thrown overboard, and specifically like pregnant slaves. So there's a scene of a pregnant slave being thrown overboard, and I don't think the audiobook is the way to go for this one. The audio itself I gave 3 out of 5 stars. I was confused a lot of the time, and it was slow, and I think that with this kind of writing you have to take it in physically, at least in my experience, and what my tastes are. So I was confused a little bit of the time and how we would flash between different scenes, and I didn't really see how these things were connected to each other. So I do want to give this one another shot and read it physically, but as an audiobook it was just too hard for me to grasp and follow along with and holding my interest, so I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. Next one I have a reading vlog for, and that is The Play by Elle Kennedy. This one was a big disappointment. Demi is supposed to be Latina, and I don't think the representation was done well at all, and it just felt very stereotypical and forced, and I wasn't a fan, and I know people who are Latina did say they didn't appreciate the representation. And this is her romance with Hunter, who has sworn a vow of celibacy to focus on hockey because his relationship ruined the championship game in the last book, so he's like, I get to take this seriously. As captain, I need to be celibate. I did not like how Demi kind of forced him to not be celibate. She kept on like pushing him and saying like, well, you know, like I need to rebound because she's a boyfriend through most of this, and then you know they're gonna break up because it's her and Hunter's relationship. And that was kind of cliche on how that happened because you could see it coming from a mile away. And if the roles were reversed and like Demi had a vow of celibacy, Hunter would have had to accept it, or else he would have been seen as like really gross and not at all okay by like forcing a girl to break her vow of celibacy. So I didn't like how it was switched, and it was okay for Demi to do that, and I just really didn't like the relationship. I really didn't like Demi. 2 out of 5 stars for this one. I was not a fan. Then I listened to Destiny's Captive by Beverly Jenkins. This is book 3 in the series, and our main character is a pirate, and she steals the ship of the love interest, and then he tries to find her and ends up finding her, and then there's a marriage of convenience because she's running away because people are trying to find her in her country because she was like with the rebel people, and it was so good. Again, Beverly Jenkins killed it with this series. I loved it. I like books 2 and 3 better than book 1. I still give this one 4 stars though, because like I said, with all of them, they end up getting together like halfway through, and then it's just like, okay, now we're together, and I get kind of bored until like something suspenseful happens at the end. But the pacing wise, I have to give it 4, but I love the series. I could not recommend it enough. Then I read an e-arc of The Dare by Elle Kennedy. This is the last book in the Briar You series, and this one I gave a 4 out of 5 stars, but after seeing some people questioning the content on Twitter, I might have to lower my rating because I did have an issue with it. This one is about our main character, who is a curvier character. It doesn't say her actual size. She does not like her body. She wants to lose weight. Everyone constantly talks about it, and she's like, I can only eat a salad because I can't have a cheeseburger because I'll gain 10 pounds. And it's her romance with someone, I don't even remember his name. She has a dare that from her sorority sisters. Her sorority sisters are like the stereotypical mean girls, and they make fun of her weight. They constantly put her in awkward situations, and there's like hazing in here, and I didn't like how it was like that. I wasn't in a sorority myself, but I'm pretty sure sororities aren't full of mean girls who are mean to each other, or else who would be in a sorority? Friends that I had in sororities were best friends with their sorority sisters, so I don't know. But she ends up having a dare from her sisters that she has to hook up with this like playboy hockey player, and so she ends up telling him about it, so they fake hook up, and then they decide to fake date to show everybody that like she can get that guy, and she needs male validation to feel good about her body. And there are some comments about her weight that I didn't really like. They're like, oh, she wasn't as beautiful as Demi, like the girl from the previous book, but like she had curves you could grab onto, and like I don't know. I did not think that Elle Kennedy wrote the curvy character the way that she should have been written. Just like she didn't write the Latina character she should have written her as, so that made me a little uncomfortable. The story overall I enjoyed a lot better than the previous one with the romance, so I might have to drop this down to a 3-star, but overall I did like the story better than the previous book in the series. Then I am doing a book club with my school district where I'm running a book club through the month of July with my kids. One of the books for the middle school is New Kid by Jerry Craft. This is actually a graphic novel, and I don't read graphic novels, so I was a little bit worried. I absolutely love this so much. Our main character is black and he's starting a new school. That's why it's called New Kid, and it's a new private school, so he has to see like how everybody's all rich and like where they come from, and one of his friends he makes has like a huge mansion, and he has to also realize that there's not as many kids like him at school, and he doesn't see a lot of black kids, and they're treated a little bit differently. Not on purpose, it's just like the things that characters choose to say and do are because of their skin color, even though they might not realize it is because of that. And I think from a teacher's perspective, I loved reading this and seeing the students' interactions with each other and with the teachers and the little things that the teachers do that kind of escalate situations, and I really love this, and it was super cute and adorable, and I liked his journey of finding friends and meeting new people and trying to fit in, so I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I loved it. Then I read It Takes Two to Tumble by Cat Sebastian. This one was, Riley read it from Riley Marie, and it was described as like a gay Sound of Music. It's an MM romance. Our main character is, I think, a vicar, and he is taking care of all these kids for this captain, and he's gone all the time, and now he's back, and it's their romance together, and I liked it, but I think it was pretty boring. I really wanted to love it more. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I didn't really feel the chemistry between the two characters. I know they like were into each other, but I didn't feel like that intense need to be together, and it was just fine. I feel like I just wasn't connected enough to the characters or their relationship, so I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. One of the picks for the high school book club that I'm running is Woven in Moonlight by Isabel Ibanez. So I read it. This is a Bolivian-inspired fantasy. Our main character is like the stand-in for royalty, so like she goes in her place to like protect her, but people think that she's actually the royal, and so she has to go to this rival kingdom and ends up being held prisoner by them, and she can weave like magic into her tapestries, so like animals come to life and she can weave messages with moonlight, and it's really cool. The story itself I think was kind of slow and boring at parts. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars, more like a 3.5, and there was like a little bit of a romance and like things kind of got confusing near the end, so overall it was fun and really unique, and I'm excited to read book 2, and it was interesting. The end did not go how I thought it would, but overall it could have been better. The next 2 books are in a book review video I did, so I'll link that down below. The first one's American Dreamer by Adriana Herrera. This one is an MM romance, and our main character owns a food truck, and he is moving to a new town to try to see if his food truck does well. It's where his mom lives, I believe, so he moves closer to his mom and his family, and it's his relationship with a librarian, and it was so cute. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. From the moment they meet, there was instant chemistry, and they kind of liked each other, and their friends were like, hey, like, are you gonna do something about that? Because sparks were flying there, and there were so many realistic struggles they each had independently, and I loved how it affected their relationship, because like we've all had struggles happen in our lives where we lashed out at our loved ones even though I had nothing to do with them, and you had to deal with the repercussions, and you had to apologize or listen to each other and talk about it, and that happened in here, and I loved it. I cannot recommend this enough. I love the whole food truck aspect. I love how the other guy was a librarian and he was trying to get a bookmobile running for his community, and it was just so good. 5 out of 5 stars. I cannot wait to read more of this series. Then I read Rebel by Beverly Jenkins. This one is the first one in the series. I think book 2 comes out next, like that's her next release, and our main character is actually a teacher, and this is right after slavery was abolished in the US, and so she is trying to create schools for blacks to learn, and the white people in society don't like that, so they keep on threatening her, burning her school down, and she has a romance with this guy. She's actually in town because she's engaged to someone else that her father set her up with, and she's only in town briefly, but then she meets this guy and he kind of helps protect her, and they start spending time together and liking each other, and it's just a very sweet romance. Definitely a lot on the slower side, but there's a lot of important historical aspects thrown in there with the romance, and that's why I love Beverly Jenkins. She teaches a lot about Black history in her books, which I love, and so I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars, definitely on the lower side of 4. This is probably my least favorite I've read by her, but it's a 4-star read, so that's, she can do no wrong. Then I read Felix Ever After by Case and Callender, and this book, you guys, was as good as everybody says it is. Felix is our main character. He is trans, and his family's struggling with accepting his trans identity. They accept it and they helped him. He got top surgery, but his dad still won't say that he's his son and call him Felix. And so Felix is in this like art program in New York, and so he spends a lot of time at his best friend's apartment, and it's just like so good. In this one, Felix is still unsure about his identity, and someone actually at the school creates this fake gallery of his dead name with his pictures pre-transition, and he's horrified, and so he spends a lot of the book trying to figure out who it is. He spends a lot of the book trying to figure out his first love, and it's just so sweet, and I think people who are not trans should read this book. As a cis white woman, I learned so much just emotionally about this book, and I'm really happy I did. I can't wait to put this in my classroom for more people to learn about the experience of someone who just doesn't know who they are. I really enjoyed this. Then I read Pet by Okweke Emezi. This one I read because Jessie from Bowties and Books recommended it in their video, and then one of my best friends from high school, she's a librarian, she saw I was reading Felix. I asked her for some trans recs and she said Pet. And so this one, our main character is, it's a middle grade, so she's younger and she's trans, and I loved how it was just part of her character. It wasn't the story. This one, our main character, it's fantasy. So her mom paints these things and a creature comes out of the painting, and its name is Pet. And it says there's a monster in town, and this is kind of like a utopian society where all monsters are gone, all racism's gone, all prejudices are gone, all statues of bad people are gone. It's just like perfect. But it shows you that things may seem perfect, but there's still monsters lying inside of things, and people can be bad and you don't know they're bad. And so she has to figure out who this monster is, and it goes from there. Trigger warnings for child abuse, I will say, but this one was really good. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I don't know if I would hand this to a middle grade reader because the fantasy world was even hard for me to grasp and to follow. I was really confused when this started, and so I do think someone who is a stronger reader would have to read this, but I really like this, and it was very unique, and I'm glad I picked it up. Next, I read Make Me Hate You by Candy Steiner. This is a second chance romance, and I got an e-arc of it and I gave it 3.5 stars. I do think I'm going to lower it down to a 3-star though because of how much I complained about it in my reading vlog that I did for this. This one is our main character hooks up with her best friend's brother, who is really her best friend too, in high school, and then he's like, it was a mistake, and so she leaves and doesn't come back for like 8 years, I want to say, for her best friend's wedding, and her and the guy are both in serious relationships, and they're like dancing around their feelings for each other. There's cheating in here, and they have to decide if they want to be together or not. It wasn't angsty to me at all. Everyone was saying this is supposed to be like a love letter to whiskey. It wasn't. The only angst was the fact that they were both dating people when they decided they wanted to hook up. And I didn't feel like there was any connection between her and her boyfriend because we never saw them together. We just saw them video chatting. I didn't feel like there was a connection between the guy and his girlfriend because we only saw them together a little bit. I didn't really feel their connection in general because they're like insane chemistry from when they were in their past happened in like the prologue, and I'm like, I need more build up than that, and so I didn't really feel their connection. I feel like this story's been told before. It was nothing new. It was super predictable. And I was mad because I didn't enjoy it because of the false advertising. As a story itself, I would have really enjoyed it if it wasn't like, it's the best, it's amazing, it's angsty, it'll want to rip your heart out. And I'm like, it didn't. So because of the advertising of this book, I didn't like it, which has affected like The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh. That marketing completely ruined my experience for that book, so I might be lowering this down to 3 because I gave it the benefit of the doubt because it was the marketing that made me not like it, but it was fine. Then I listened to When a Scot Ties a Knot by Tessa Dare. This one, our main character, she wants to focus on her own career of drawing and illustrating science, and so she illustrates critters and creatures, and she doesn't want to worry about having to find a husband, so she makes up a fiance who is this captain, or I don't remember his name, like general, and he's Scottish, and she makes up his name and she writes him letters, and it's her fiance, so everyone backs off, and then she has to pretend that he dies so that she can move on with her life. And then a year later he shows up at this Scottish castle she's inherited so that she could raise her family there, and he's like, hey fiance, I'm here, and yeah, he's a real person, and she didn't know that, and so he's like, okay, I'm here to collect on this marriage, and it's really fun. He'd been getting her letters. It's super adorable. I don't want to say anything else because that would spoil it, but I really enjoyed how they had to get to know each other, and she's freaking out because she doesn't want people to know she lied, and I really liked how she liked that profession of being an illustrator of like things, and so she had to put her career first, and she was a very career driven woman, which I appreciated. It was really fun, and I really liked the end, so I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. We are almost done. Next, I read Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. This is a thriller, and this one, I don't have my copy. I gave it to my dad because he wanted to read it after me. It's about our main character who, when she was 5, she lived in this house, and they were run out by ghosts, her and her parents, and her parents wrote a tell-all nonfiction book about the ghosts in this house, and she thinks it's all a lie, and she's really bitter and angry about it, and so her father has passed away, and she has inherited the house. She didn't know that her father kept it, so she has returned to fix it up and sell it, and it alternates between chapters of the book and chapters of her in the present day at this house. And so I liked the alignment of the chapters. They matched up really well between what was happening then and now, and like what they were discovering then and now, and I liked the twists and turns at the end. I didn't see them coming, and so I definitely really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It wasn't as scary as I thought it would be, but I liked it. It was thrilling enough and twisty enough that I never felt bored. The beginning's a little slow when they set up the whole house, but I was entertained the whole time. I couldn't put it down, so 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read Queen Move by Kennedy Ryan. This one is a spinoff of the All the King's Men duet. It is Kimba's story. Kimba and Ezra meet literally when they're babies because they were born on the same day. Their parents live by each other. They may be next door neighbors. Ezra is half black and half Jewish, and his mother is very hurt by the fact that people constantly ask whose son it is because he doesn't look like her because he is half black and she's Jewish. She's hurting, and so she finds friends where they move to in Georgia, and that is Kimba's mother. So Kimba and Ezra grow up pretty much together, and they're best friends, and Ezra is struggling with his Jewish identity because they don't live near his Jewish family, which is his mother's family. They live back in New York, and so he deals with a lot of discovering his religion, and him and Kimba are falling for each other, and then when they turn 13 though, Ezra has to leave. They're reunited 24, 25 years later when they are both 38, and Kimba is working as a political person. She like helps with campaigns. I don't know what that word is, but he is a teacher, and they're reunited, and he actually has a son, and Kimba is dealing with something personally, and that's all I can say, but it's so good. I absolutely loved it. I love the complexities of Kennedy Ryan's books. I did a live show with Lacey on her channel with Kennedy Ryan where we talked to her about the book. I'll link it down below. Kennedy did so much research, so much more than I thought she would. I mean, for contemporary, you think people just sit down and write. Kennedy researches the crap out of her book, so she researched so much about this book, especially with Ezra and his Jewish heritage, and I loved it so much. The relationship was super angsty, so many different age gaps, so many different choices and decisions needed to be made. There's a trope in here I normally hate that I absolutely loved how it was dealt with, and so I could not recommend this book enough. 5 out of 5 stars. Then I listened to The Madness of Lord Ian McKenzie by Jennifer Ashley. This one is about a guy who is inferred to be on the autism spectrum. It's not actually spoken in the book because they didn't have that term back then, but he doesn't really understand social situations. He has a brilliant mind for numbers and a photographic memory. He thinks that he's incapable of love, and so he's not like other people, and his dad actually puts him in an insane asylum when he's younger because nobody knows what to do with him and they can't explain who he is. And so now he's out of the insane asylum. He has a whole life of his own, and he's actually really wealthy, and he runs into Beth, and Beth is a widow, which I loved about this book, and he's like, I like you, let's just like become lovers. And so she's like, oh, what? Excuse me. And they start a relationship, and it's so good. I loved how Beth loved Ian's character and how Ian knows what he wants, but he knows he's different and knows he can't love anybody. So it was heartbreaking. I love Ian's family. There is a mystery at the end that wraps up at the end that they're trying to figure out throughout the whole thing, and it's so good. And Beth becomes friends with his family, and I can't wait for their books. I already can't wait to read book 2. I have it downloaded already from my library, so 5 out of 5 stars. I love this. Last 3 are all historical romances. The next I read Daring and the Duke by Sarah McLean. This is book 3 in the Bare Knuckled Bastard series. This is Grace and Ewan's story. Ewan is the villain of the series, so we're highly anticipating this book, and I thought it was okay. I love Grace's character. She runs this like pleasure house for women, and she was a bare-knuckled fighter herself. She is just so strong, independent, doesn't take society's stereotypes of what a woman should be, and Ewan, he's making up for what he did, and I feel like it was fine. Most of this book was pretty boring in my opinion, and I wanted more groveling between Ewan and Grace. Ewan really groveled more towards her brothers, and because of what he did, and pertaining to why he did what he did that like made him the villain, it didn't come to light until the very end, but she had already forgiven him even though she didn't know why he did it, so I don't know. It was fine. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I wanted more, but this whole series has been kind of middle of the road for me, so yeah. But the cover's gorgeous, and the setback's gorgeous, and I like it a lot. Then from NetGalley, I read my e-arc of Devil of Downtown by Joanna Shupe, and the beginning was kind of slow, so I did give this 4 out of 5 stars. Our main character is the sister of the girl from book 1. Book 2 is their other sister. She is definitely like babied because she's the baby of the family. They don't want her getting in danger, even though they do. They are all very humanitarian, so they work for the poor and like try to help them, and so our main character tries to help women whose husbands have run off, and like you can't find people in the 1800s that easily. If someone leaves, they leave, and so she's trying to help these women find their husbands so they can give child support and provide support, and she enlists the help of the head gangster of New York basically, and he is bad, but he can get pretty much anything he wants out of anybody because everybody owes him favors, and the guy she's looking for works for him, and so that's how they kind of meet. And her sisters are like, you can't be associated with him, stop, but she kind of falls for him. It's so good. Like I said, the beginning was a little slow, but once we got halfway, I could not put this book down. So much happened, and I love the romance, and it was just so good. Frank was in it from book 1 with his love interest. I don't remember her name, but it was really good. I love the sister dynamics. I can't wait to read book 2 and read so much more from Joanna Shupe. The last book I listened to on audio, and that is Devil of the Highlands by Lindsay Sands. Our main character has a really evil stepmother, and so her stepmother's like, I'm gonna make your life miserable, so you're gonna marry this really evil guy who's the laird of a clan, and he's known as the Devil of the Highlands, and so she's freaking out, and she is one morning riding on her horse and runs into this group of men and has a moment with one of them, and then she's like, I can't do this, I'm engaged, and he's like, that's me. And so she realizes that he's not really as bad as society thinks he is, because he never puts to rest the rumors about him. He just like lets them fly and doesn't care, and so it was good. I ended up giving this one more 3.5 out of 5 stars. There's a mystery near the end, and it was just really slow because it's a marriage of convenience. They get married in the beginning. So once they get married to when they go to his clan's keep, their like castle, it was fine, and it was a little slow, and I like didn't end up really caring about the mystery that happened at the end. So I ended up giving this one 3 out of 5 stars, but I'm excited to read more from Lindsay Sands. Thanks for sticking around. That is my June wrap up. That was a lot, but let me know what you guys read and what you enjoyed, or if you've enjoyed any of these books I talked about. I would love to hear. As always, thank you so much for watching, and have a good day. Bye.